Hello and welcome to the Perpetual Traffic Podcast. This is your host, Ralph Burns, and this is episode 328. We are still recording from the floor of Traffic and Conversion Summit here in sunny San Diego. My co-host, Qasim Aslam, is hanging backstage with Snoop Dogg, so he will not be here for today's show. Lucky him. Sharing that bottle of Cristal with him, and I think I definitely got the short end of the stick on that deal, but he's really working, but I'm actually having all the fun over here in the Scooby-Doo van because I've got a guy here that I think you're really going to enjoy listening to, who has taken a very different path to build a really profitable business, targeting, as we always talk about, niching down to scaling up to a certain degree, although this is a large niche we're talking about here today. I've got the CEO and founder of Traffic Sales and Profit, Lamar Tyler, who is going to be speaking tomorrow here at Traffic and Conversion Summit. Welcome to Perpetual Traffic, man.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, this is awesome. So, I think we love having people on this show that have a different take on how to figure this online digital marketing stuff out. And I know that you're a student of Ryan Dice and digital marketer and came up through the ranks, obviously some Infusionsoft background as well, but sort of tell me how you started, how this evolved into a profitable business here, and what you're doing now to serve your ideal customer. And we'll sort of take you, the listener, sort of back through his entire story step by step, figure out ways in which you can maybe draw from this and also do the same kind of thing. How have you built community to build what's a really profitable and enjoyable and obviously delivering a tremendous amount of value for your customers?
Sure. Well, it's all about what you just talked about, that word you said, community.
Yeah.
And with us, it started with a blog, believe it or not, in December 2007. We wanted to promote, encourage, equip positive images of marriage in the African American community. So we started a site and it quickly took off. And by taking off, we began to leverage social media. We began to create more content. And we found that the best way to really take care of people was to build community and have them where they can engage and interact with us, where they can engage and interact with each other. They could know that we had their best intentions in mind, right? Because I think that's very important. Mm-hmm. As we begin to think about, who we market to and how we market to them. And even more so today than it was back in 2007. Because today, people have been jaded by so many things. They bought so many things online, and it could have been an info product. It could have been a dress that said it was a size large, but really came in a size small, mm-hmm. right? So they're looking at us through a different lens. But we started that site around marriage. It took off. We started selling physical products, and for us, that was documentary films, and then later ebooks, audiobooks, courses, workshops, cruises, all types of things. But in the process of that, two things happened. Number one, we learned how to sell, and we learned how to sell and market online by doing a lot of things wrong. And it wasn't until we started coming to conferences like Traffic and Conversion Summit that we started to really understand what it meant to not just serve a million different people, but to serve someone, serve them well, and serve them over and over again to increase the average order value at purchase point, to increase the customer lifetime value along the path. And the other thing that happened is that we were growing a very public brand. We were servicing over 1 million readers, organic every quarter. At the time, we weren't doing paid advertising yet like we do today. We had over 500,000 people on the Facebook page. So people saw us building from just a husband and wife, working at home. I say we had a bedroom business because we built in the corner of our master bedroom. They saw us grow from that to us having editors, us having 40 plus writers, us doing, live events and having people coming out. And they started to ask, the question that most people always ask is, can you teach me how to do it? Can you show us how to do it? Mm-hmm. Can we pay you to, show us how to build what you built? So we started a new brand called Traffic Sales and Profit. But we didn't forget the number one lesson we learned from that original brand, which was to start with community.
Got it. I mean, it sounds all great now. But back in 2007, to start a Facebook group, to start a blog, to actually get people to follow what you're doing, what would you say to people that are saying, well, that's great that Lamar did that, but that's a long road. The average blogger still, I think the statistic is it lasts 2 to 3 months. The average podcast lasts 2 to 3 months because you don't really ever get past that point or that tipping point where you start to get enough traffic to make it an actual community. So what sort of things would you say to people that say, yeah, that's nice, but what's the key to it all?
Well, that's a great question, and it's excellent because we didn't even start. We started on MySpace. Does anybody listening remember MySpace?
Nobody.
But we started on MySpace, and going back now, what I teach and train and talk about now is that really it's so much easier for a host of reasons. For one, you can tap into information and podcasts and things like this to get the breadcrumbs and just follow the path. But beyond that, when I look now, I'm just looking at number one, like what are the challenges and problems people are facing? You know, how's my product or service or my client's product or service help overcome those challenges? How can we get in front of them and present it in a way that they have what I call a head nod factor? When I'm speaking to somebody's problems or pain points, I want that head nodding the whole time where they say, hey, guess what? He or she understands exactly where I am, exactly what I'm going through, and what they're talking about sounds like it can actually fix that. And then once I get a hold of that, now I just want to get in front of as many people as possible. And we do that a lot through paid traffic now. You know, coming into it, we learned a lot of lessons. One of the lessons I learned at one point was that we could basically pour gasoline on the whole thing because we knew where our customer and client were. We just need to get in front of more of them. And for a long time we didn't because we had so much organic growth coming through. But it really was a conversation I had with myself one day where I said, well, I've eaten at this place called McDonald's, probably more than I should have. But I said, guess what? They're pretty big. Most people know them around the world, but they advertise. I said, I've worn Nike shoes. Guess what? Nike has what? Like something like a 95, 96, 97% share of the men's shoe basketball market. But do they advertise? Yes. Like all these titans, Amazon now. I see an Amazon advertisement every day. So if these companies that everyone knows all around the world have to advertise, then as a small business owner, why don't I? And when I took that kind of shift around the way I thought about it, it changed everything. And we went from selling like a little bit of products every day to a lot of products every day. And now, you know, I still tell people, let's get back to the core of who are you serving? What's the challenge? How does what you serve overcome that challenge? Let's get super clear around that. And then let's do two things, right? Do some type of paid traffic to get people to them quickly, but then also incorporate a community with it so that once they come in, you can maximize them, you can get them to know, like, and trust you, and it can accelerate everything that you're doing.
So you started off with a blog, right? And this is in the marriage and parenting space.
Correct.
So targeting the African
American community,
community. So, like, how did it, take us through, like, those first kind of steps? Like, did you start to blog in 2007? Was it before that? Like, what were the first couple of months like? Why did you choose that niche specifically? Like, what? Sure. Like, why?
So we did start it in December 2007. We said, hey, let's create a site, for one, that people would read. You know, there are writers that just love it's in my soul, it's in my spirit. I just want to write, even if no one's I can't do that. I need somebody has to be reading that content at the end of the day.
Yeah. So at first they're not.
Exactly, right? So we said, before we start writing, let's think about things that people like to talk about and discuss. So we said relationships. Then we said, let's dig a little bit deeper because relationships is too broad. We said marriage. We said, let's dig even deeper. And we said, okay, let's talk about and write about marriage in the African American community, how others view it outside of the community, how we view it ourselves, and let's dig deeper into it. So when we got that and we niched all the way down, and a lot of times people say, well, you know, you can just talk about all marriage or broad marriage. You said, no, we want to do is pick a very narrow niche, and we want to dominate that niche. And we became like the go-to brand around that. So when some of America's largest brands, Disney, Pampers, Hanes, Fisher-Price, we did work with the Ministry of Tourism for the Bahamas. When they wanted to reach African-American families or African-American moms, they came through us because we dominated that niche. And it really was a process of, it grew relatively fast. And the reason it did is, again, because we knew we were in a niche that was underserved. So when we went into that market and we said, hey, successful marriages and families exist in this community, we had married couples that said, we've been married 20, 30, 40 years. We never see ourselves represented on TV, in the news, in the media. We had singles that said, hey, my parents have been married 40, 50 years and I never see them. I never see couples like them shown, right, on TV when I open up the newspapers or listen to the radio. So again, we were speaking to a very specific need that was there when we started creating content, and not just creating anything, right, for everybody listening. For you and your clients, you're creating great content that spoke directly to those pain points. Everything began to grow. Everything began to take off. But the main things we had to do, number one, we had to be consistent. Number two, we had to create great content. Number three, we had to be creative, right? What can we do and how can we create it in a way that's different from what everybody else is doing so that we stand out? And when we had those first 3 C's, consistency, the great content, creativity, the 4th C that we brought into was culture. And that's where that tribe and that community comes in. We begin to build a culture where, people came into that culture that were negative or against the values and the things that we talked about. The community themselves would point the person out and move them out of the group. And really, I think that's what's missing a lot of times when we try to be so transactional. What we're missing is the actual culture and building a real community and tribe around the things that we do.
Got it. Super interesting. I mean, I'm obviously not an African American, but it's like what you're talking about here is even from a white guy's outsider viewpoint. It's like I watch 30 for 30. I'm like on a 30 for 30 binge. And it seems like it's origination stories for a lot of black athletes. And they don't come from, the traditional, mom and dad, like very, very, in very few exceptions. It's like from a Caucasian male outsider's viewpoint, I can see exactly like what it is that you're talking about. That's an incredibly underserved community, because all the African American friends that I have are all, are not like that. But the media, the portrayal is very different.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, I can even see that as a niche that you could figure. You figured this out in 2007. I mean, that must have been, if it's rare today, it must have been even more rare back, 13, 14 years ago when you guys were first starting.
It was, and what it looked like and how it manifested in our business. We originally did advertising, like I said, big brands and companies would come to us, and then, we would connect them to our audience because we had a large audience of people that trusted us and believed in us, and we were, blog influencers at the time. Mm-hmm. What it morphed into from there is I had a friend that said, hey, you've got to create product. Right, he said, like, you drive a lot of traffic, like, what happens? And I'm like, we drive a lot of traffic. Not everyone sticks, but a percentage of the people stick, and then we sell more ads. Mm-hmm. But then he kept asking, like, what happens after that? And I, give another piece, what happens after that? And he said, you have to have your own product so that you can kind of own that relationship more with the actual customer instead of just selling that to somebody else. And when he said that, what I realized was that the more we tried to serve the brands and the more we turned towards the brands, we actually turned away from the people that were coming for the actual content.
Ah, right. Yeah. So it sounded good at first.
It sounded,
like, hey, this is monetization.
Great. Yeah, but what we had to realize is that with the money, we had to start creating content that was more catered towards the people that were paying us.
Gotcha.
Instead of the people that we were supposed to be serving.
Going to buy Pampers.
Exactly.
Right.
So
they probably need it anyway. But
they probably need it, but that may not have been the most important thing for us to talk about.
That was your first monetization strategy.
Yeah, that was the first monetization strategy. We got a hold of creating products. Like I said, we had this crazy idea to do documentary films. Mm-hmm. The first doc I did, I bought an old SD camera. Like I said, this is a long time ago, so younger people listen, I'm sorry. They're like, what in the world is an SD camera?
So it's a good camera back then.
Right.
Yeah.
The guy, he had done documentaries. He was upgrading to HD, sold me his old SD camera, and I was going to shoot some content for the actual website. My wife said, Lamar, I think you can do this. I think you can go out. So every day after work for 2 weeks, I went out and just interviewed couples. I bought $50 worth of software from Best Buy and loaded on my machine and learned how to edit. I use that term very loosely because I hate to look at the original product now, but learn how to edit. And we created our very first film. And then for the next 5 years, we released a new film every single year. Ended up releasing 2 more, so like I said, 7 in total. But when we had product, then we began to really learn how to market. And the other thing we learned is that we were basically selling away our influence to other people. They were coming to us and paying us because we had influence with our community, but we weren't using it enough for ourselves. And when we got our own product, then we could serve the community even better because we literally were making exactly what they needed in these films, in these documentaries. And we were telling the stories like you mentioned before. There were underserved stories that weren't being told. So all of a sudden, a husband and wife that no one knows for the most part, we can, time I lived in the DC area, I'm from the DC area, we could do a screening in DC to where we would buy independent theaters, do screenings. We had to stop doing screenings in DC because none of the theaters could hold us. So we went to neighboring Prince George's County. We went out to Public Playhouse in Cheverly, Maryland. We do 500 plus for a screening. They'd set up folding chairs down the aisle. I said it looked like church on Easter Sunday.
That's awesome.
And then we'd add additional shows. we go to Chicago. And again, right, we looked at the data. We look at our website and our blog. We look at Google Analytics and say, where do we have audience at? Those are the places we're going to do the actual tour. So we go to Chicago and do screenings and do multiple week runs. We go to Houston, to Texas, to Atlanta, to Baltimore, to St. Louis, right? And we were going around the country and doing this. And every time we released a movie, not only did we become better at storytelling, we became better at marketing, we became better at how we actually presented the problems and talked to the actual clients and people, individuals that were coming out watching the film. And then we began to learn too how not to just have one product, but how to extend that relationship. So the first movie, we sold a DVD, and then we had some T-shirts. By movie 4, 5, 6, and 7, if you had the movie, right, we did a six-figure pre-sale on one of the films. And we did it because we had a bundle where it was a DVD, it was a ebook that came along with it, and besides the DVD and ebook, there was like another digital product, right? Because we came to traffic and conversion, and I heard Roland or Perry or Ryan talk about, hey, when you have a physical product, increase the value with a digital product.
Sure.
So we created that bundle, did a pre-sale for it. In addition to that, then we started having courses. Then we would have a funnel. And through the funnel, we would upsell to either our products or products of people we joint ventured with. So it just became an entire process. And like I said, it was great, but it took too long to learn all of it. Like, we really did it the hard way. We should have connected with more people that had the solutions, people that were further along than us, but we learned everything on our own. So we got there, but we should have got there in half the time. And if we would have, we could have taken advantage of more. And if it's one message I could leave for everybody, it's to not make the assumption that what's available today will be available tomorrow. At the time where a lot of this explosive growth was happening, it was happening because Facebook was wide open.
Right.
If I like something and I like the page on Facebook, it would show all my friends, hey, Lamar likes this page. And if they're my friends, most likely they have an affinity to like that page too.
Sure.
When we posted on the actual Facebook page, they would show it to everybody that liked the page. So it just became a content race of how much content can we post, because every time we post, it's going to be seen by 20, 30, 40,000 people.
Sure.
Things change. And we learned that. We learned that.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, yeah, organic is really sort of a thing of the past, but you figured out a way around that. I mean, just taking you through the monetization strategy, the documentaries, the showings in all these individual cities, you're doing individual showings, touring around the country. The monetization strategy is to sell tickets for the documentary. Is that at that point?
So that was
these showings, or no?
That was the entryway. Okay. So, and most time we sell tickets, they would offset the cost of the venue and advertising and things like that for a portion of it. But at the actual screenings, we would package up and sell our DVDs as well, because we have physical DVDs and discs.
Got
so
it.
we make more of it off of that. And the beauty of it was because people knew I can't just go and watch this on HBO. But when they see great content, when you see a great movie, what do? You want to tell other people. Sure. They would have to actually buy the movie to show it to other people. So then we really promoted a lifestyle of, hey, you get this movie, you go home and you do a screening in your home where more people can actually watch it, more people can enjoy it, and spread the word through social media, take pictures, post it, tag us, we'll promote it and share everything like that. Okay. And then addition to that, what we started to do was think outside of the box, what else can we do? I went to a film festival and they had a session on product placement. And I said, okay, Coke's not going to pay me to put, a can of Coke in the background of my documentary. Like, that's just not going to happen. But what we did is we had experts in every film. So I went to book publishers and said, hey, do you have experts to speak specifically to marriage around these topics? And we found a publisher, for example, that said, hey, I do have an author coming out with a marriage book, right around the same quarter. And they paid us, and the product placement was the actual expert to put them in the film. So we put them in the film, pull out a couple bullets for on-air, on-screen text. And then when we went on tour, we take the expert with us, get them a few minutes before we showed our own trailers in our movie, and then they'd be set up out in the lobby to sell books, to create testimonials and things like that along the way. So still thinking outside the box to where all the ways we can really monetize this and drive it home.
Got it. It's the secret model to a certain degree. All those guys that were in that movie, obviously, pretty popular movie. That was the exact monetization strategy that they used, and now there are a lot of that movie in essence made them. So I'm sure you probably have a lot of individual authors who are singing your graces because you helped launch their careers. In addition, obviously, helping monetize the entire documentary.
We did. And something else I learned along that path is how powerful video is. Because with video, when we shared something on the screen and it was emotional and people were in that room, the way they cried, somebody said something that was mildly funny, the way people laughed, right? And it's something that may have been lacking over the last year or two because we haven't had the same level of connection that we have. But when people are in a room, the emotion of that room is something special. So we really had to look at, okay, how are we telling these stories? What can we do? We had, one of our sponsors was an actual DNA company, African Ancestry. And African Ancestry would run a 30-second promo before the actual film started. We ran our trailers. At the end, we would have the CEO, Dr. Gina Page, come up and she would speak for 5 or 10 minutes talking about what they do and how they can connect you to your past and show you where you are in the world, things like that. And then they were able to sell $200 and $300 DNA kits in the lobby of the actual film screening. And that was not the original. The original intention was just brand awareness. Hey, we coming on tour with you guys because you guys serve our audience. Right. It's the demographic, it's psychographic data. But again, it shows like the power of getting the right people in the right niche, in the right place with that right message. Nobody comes to a movie expecting, hey, I'm going to drop $300 on the way out
DNA test, yeah.
in the lobby, right, on the DNA test. Yeah. But again, it shows the power of, video, community connection, all those things come together.
And the content was, just so people are clear on this, was showing healthy African-American marriage relationships, tips, like what was it specifically? I don't think we really
Great question, because we had to learn how to create better content. In the beginning, it just was couples telling their stories. But then as we evolved, we need to speak more to that pain point again. So we went from just kind of the entertainment of couples telling their stories to, we did a film called Still Standing, and we basically went through our website, went through Google Analytics. We said, what are our articles that get the most traffic, and what are the categories they're in? And they were in 6 categories. Things like communication, infidelity, intimacy, money. Right, it was like a very blended families, like a very specific list. Yeah. So we made a documentary.
There's your table of contents right there.
Hey, we got 6 couples, and guess what they talked about? The 6 topics that people came to the website and engaged and read the most. Right, and that was one of our most popular actual marriage films. And then we talked about it. We talked about their stories, but then again, we started creating resources around it. So in the beginning, it just was, hey, entertainment. Here's a movie, but then we had a movie, then we had the ebook, then we had courses around each one of these topics. On the website, we began to get more advanced, so we began to segment on the website better. So when somebody came and they would read an article, and they were reading an article on, let's say, infidelity and cheating, we had a lead magnet that was specifically about infidelity and cheating, right? We would tag them in our CRM that, hey, this person is interested in infidelity and cheating, or they probably wouldn't be reading this article about infidelity and cheating.
Makes sense.
So then also when we're creating movies around those topics, then we have a segment of our list that we can speak to about the movie, but speak to them specifically in the actual lane that they're challenged from.
Yeah. Talk to them, and they add copy, whatever the email copy specifically around that for
exactly around it. At the same time, of course, we've got the Facebook pixel on the site. So then we have custom audiences going where this is a custom audience of people that are interested in infidelity content. This one is blended family content, money content. So then when we need to actually advertise the movie, we can go after those segments, create lookalike audiences, and know exactly what the pain points these couples were facing.
Perfect. So how did this transition over? Like this is a scalable model, but not quite as scalable as I think where you're at right now. Yeah. Like this is, you're handcrafting this whole thing, really. I mean, you're doing it through blogging. You're looking at your analytics, all lessons that you, the listener, should be doing with all of the stuff that you're doing in your online business anyway. But when were you able to really sort of scale it up and sort of transition away from the relationship side into what you're doing now? Or is the relationship stuff still going full bore, even though you're sort of pivoted a bit in your direction?
Great question. What we had to do first is we had to stabilize the first brand before we turned to the second. Okay. And I think a lot of times, right, entrepreneurs get all these ideas and all these things you want to do, and as you get more successful, more opportunities just fall in your lap. Right. So people kept coming saying, teach us, train us, and entrepreneurship was really the thing I was even more passionate about than marriage and relationships.
Okay.
So I wanted to do it, but it really took about another year or two for us to really stabilize the original brand, to get all the automations running, to get all the systems in place, to get it. So, like I said, the content was kind of running on autopilot, and things were kind of moving on that path before we shifted gears, because we knew that if we shifted without a firm foundation, all of that would have fell apart.
Right.
So once we did that, it took about a year or two to stabilize everything. Like I said, people were coming to us saying, hey, like we've been to the screenings. We remember when it was like 100 people in the theater, now it's 500. We've seen all the press, like we've seen all the things, teach us how to do what you did. And it really began to transition in on that side to, okay, we said we can take all the things we've learned on that side and then transition them to a new audience and really teach them from the things that we've done, the lessons we've learned, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so that they can be successful, but they can have success faster.
How did you do that without alienating the base? Or was it just like, hey, what, were you on the Facebook page yet? Were you on the Facebook group? Like, how did that all sort of happen? Because sort of the next step of the evolution really is the Facebook group, correct?
Interesting question, Ralph. I was faced with a stark reality. And that stark reality I was faced with was that the people that it came to us for marriage and relationship information did not care anything about us talking business. Now, my thinking was, hey, we have...
That was my bigger question.
We have 500,000 people.
Right.
We have 500,000 people here, right? So, this is about to get crazy. This is going to be so easy. I'm showing that 500,000, a lot of them, even if they aren't full-time entrepreneurs, have side hustles. They would like to make their main hustle and grow. But everything we tried to do business-focused with that audience flopped. And what we learned was that those people that came to us for that specific thing, in their eyes and in their lens, that's what they knew us for and that's what they wanted. So this new brand, literally we had to almost start a brand new brand from scratch.
Okay.
Because everything we were doing with the marriage brand, like they did not want to hear it. I don't want to hear about your business. I don't hear about your traffic. I don't want to convert more sales. Tell me about this communication. How can we be more intimate? How can we raise these kids?
All that stuff.
Exactly. So we really had to build a new brand. And what we did, most of was going out and again using what we did in the first one as case studies. And it allowed us to show that, hey, again, we all know that what's important is that know, like, trust factor.
Sure.
And it gave us equity in our community to say, hey, look at the work we've already done. We've already been doing good work. So we've already been here established in supporting and providing and uplifting the community. In addition, what it also allowed us to do is have a ton of case studies from our own experience.
Sure.
You know, in a time where so many people are teaching and training on so many things they haven't actually done, we were able to say, hey, this is how we got hundreds of couples to go on a cruise. Hey, this is how we did a 6-figure pre-sale of a documentary. And you may not have a documentary, but you got an ebook, you got a book, you got something, and we can do it. These are emails that work well. These are sales pages that didn't. And the community really gathered towards that message, and it resonated with them.
So separate community for this new niche. So the relationship side is still on the blog. Is it over on a Facebook group at this point, or this is where you're sort of transitioning into it?
It's a Facebook page still. It's not a group, it's a Facebook page. We still post content there regularly. People still engage with the content. People still read articles and you know, buy products and different things from it.
Right.
But like I said, this is a totally different community that we started in a group at the time. We knew, by the time we started this, we knew the writing was on the wall for Facebook pages because we already saw the decline in organic and everything going down.
Yep.
So we said, you know what, let's create a group, create a community.
Year about what?
This is about 2015.
2015.
2015,
Gotcha.
yep. So 2015, we were making that transition and begin to really get people in, engage with them, hone in on them, create content, let them know that we were listening, and we had to heavily curate. Even now, we still have to heavily curate that group because most entrepreneurs, I think, that come in the entrepreneurs group come in very self-serving to promote themselves.
Sure.
And I think that's the number one thing that turns people away from most entrepreneur groups online is that, hey, I want to learn something, I want to engage, I want to network with people. I don't want to see people posting their version of digital flyers, you know, online the whole time. So heavily curating it to make sure it's full of value, full of nuggets.
That's not you at this point. This is something.
No, exactly. Yeah, it's
managing.
team. Yep, it's team that we have. Yeah, and it works well.
So that transition, how did you gain momentum on a Facebook group? If somebody says, all right, well, this is great. I know Facebook groups are a powerful way to create community, especially today. How did you do it, making that transition, learning obviously lots and lots of lessons, doing it, you know, more handcrafting it all the way through in the marriage and relationship side? How did you start to gain some momentum on the Facebook group?
For us, early on building that community, a lot of was word of mouth for other people, right? We started with, like I said, consistency, content, creativity, and really built a culture in the group. So a lot of was word of mouth, us prompting people to literally bring their people with them, right? Hey, if you're enjoying the group, Make sure you tag 10 people, invite 10 people or 20, 30, 40 people and get them in a group. Doing giveaways.
But not from the marriage and relationship
Not
side.
from the marriage, like totally kind of new
You
community
tried that,
of people.
didn't work.
It did not work.
Right.
It failed
Anything, it
miserably.
probably alienated someone. Like, what are these guys doing this
Exactly,
other crap for?
exactly.
Came for here. Got it.
They're like, we're not here for this. So a lot of organic in the beginning, right? Building great content. We started doing webinars, and we started doing the events. I started with a online course that we created. So we were starting to build some traction in this space of telling people, okay, how you can kind of build and grow online and work your business through those ways. And as we were doing webinars and different things like that, we would share the group and people, if I was speaking on the stage and they saw me, if I was doing a webinar and they saw me, always having that call to action for them to, hey, if you like this, we got a free group that's full of tons of resources and things like that, and they came in and did it. And then we later on learned that, okay, we could do things like online challenges, we can do things like online summits, and testing different mechanisms, digital mechanisms that we could use to say, all right, let's go from getting, a few people a day to hundreds of thousands of people within short amounts of time, but still making sure when they get in that group, we have to over deliver, we have to blow them away, we have to serve them, so that as soon as they get here, they realize the space is different.
Gotcha. Was there paid advertising behind that at that point? Or no?
At that point later on, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, at that point later on. But it was not directly to the group. Like I said, most time it was to a webinar, it was to an online summit that we did. Now we do a lot of online challenges. So we do, the paid traffic to something that allows us to actually capture that first name, that email address, that text number, so we can SMS, send text messages. But then as a byproduct, the second step, we want to move them into the group because that's where all the community is.
Got it. And most of the conversion from that initial opt-in, that initial engagement, came through what, email sequences, that kind of thing?
Yep, exactly.
To get them into the group, obviously talking live certainly helps. Okay. So opt-in, free opt-in, webinar, something that they're interested in. What was the front end bait for them? Was it a case study of how you guys were able to do certain things?
Yeah, a lot of times is what's working, is how we built this audience, how we did a 6-figure pre-launch, how we've been able to grow and scale this other online brand, and people wanting to connect and learn with that. We would oftentimes meet therapists and counselors and say, hey, they've been going to school for this. This is like what they do, and they're like, hey, you guys just a husband and wife, and I'm struggling for clients, and you guys have like all these people. Like, how does that work, and how does that happen?
Okay.
Even we were in the marriage space. To go back to some of the lessons that we've learned in places like this over the years, we were doing it because we were passionate about it.
Right.
What we found out later on, once we got into it, was that there were nonprofits, federally funded nonprofits, that were getting millions and millions of dollars to talk to the same couples we were, and they couldn't, because the couples wouldn't listen, because they didn't know how to market to them. During the Bush administration, like I said, it was 2007, 2008, like around that time, during the Bush administration, they had money set aside for what they call healthy marriage initiatives. And they said, all right, if we can help marriages stay together, those will provide healthy families provide healthy communities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What would happen is these nonprofits would say, hey, if you're married, we want you to come out, we're having a healthy marriage seminar. They say it's going to be free. They say if you have kids, we'll give you a child care stipend. If you drive, we'll give you a gas card. We'll feed you dinner while you're here. And if you're married, we'll actually put you up for a night at the hotel so you can have a date night. Guess what? Most of the time, they had to actually cancel these events because nobody would sign up. And when we looked at it, again, they would come to us and say, how are you guys doing what you're doing? And we looked at it and we said, well, for one, the language that you're using is all wrong. You're not connecting with anybody. They were using brochures and materials a lot of times that may come from the headquarters in one state, but it looked nothing like the actual people they were serving in this other community.
Got it.
They were calling everything healthy marriage. And we were telling them, like, we've never had a couple say, I'm tired because this marriage just isn't healthy enough. A couple said, I'm tired of fussing and fighting. I'm tired of arguing. I can't trust you. Right. I don't know what you're doing with the money. Like, so again, the core fundamentals of marketing. What's the language that we're using? Who are the people that we're speaking to? What's their belief systems? Where are they at? Are they frustrated? Are they sad? Are they happy when they come into contact with us in this product or service? And being able to just get granular and clear on those things and then moving beyond that. So we do the same things that we did in the marriage space, in the business space, and it began to take off.
So interesting that you were targeting those counselors that you were actually probably outperforming through the stuff that you guys were doing on your own. Obviously a good group to talk to initially. but then it was more widespread with, African American business owners.
Exactly.
How did it become more widespread? And then talk to me about your monetization strategy at that point. 'Cause
Sure.
obviously, you're not doing this for free.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We begin to see entrepreneurship as a vehicle and catalyst for our community, for our entire African American community, where we say we can use this, we can help build up entrepreneurs, we can close the wealth gap, we can create more jobs, we can lower the unemployment rate, and we feel like entrepreneurs are the ones that can do all of that. So we said, hey, you know what, we're going to create the content, we're going to give them the information, give them the knowledge, give them the next steps of what they actually need. So we broadened up, like I said, the marriage and therapists, they were already watching us from the original brand, so that was kind of low-hanging fruit that we began to start with. But, we went on to work with beauty brands and coaches and consultants and all types of different folks, where, of course, and originally they would come in and say, does this work for me? I don't know if this, my thing is different, right? That's what everybody says, but we were able to show them that the fundamental core pieces of business are the same no matter what you do, pretty much.
Got it. And how do you curate in the Facebook group? Like what kind of stuff? Is it mostly user-generated content at this point? Or like
it is.
Or is it you guys posting stuff and case studies and things that we've done?
Great question. So in the beginning, right, I think it's heavy on the actual curator of the group. What I tell people all the time is that only a small fraction of that group will ever engage actively, right?
Sure.
So I say if you got 1,000 people, you might have 100 that are actually active in the group, liking things and hearts and emojis and yeah, exactly, doing that type of thing. Out of that 100, you might have 20 that post regularly, and you might have 10 that post all the time. The problem with most people's groups is they never grow the group large enough so that you hit that tipping point where user-generated content becomes a thing. They kind of give up, or they're not posting enough, or they're not engaging enough. So in the beginning, where we had to create a lot, had to post a lot, and when I mean post a lot, I'm not always talking about I'm doing long-form videos and these deep dive things. It could just be a great question that sparks content and engagement, and Facebook, algorithm sees it, allows more people to see it.
More and more people
Then
engage.
they come into the group and engage. But now, since the group has grown, now it's to a point where that 20% of people that ever do anything, and that 10% of people that talk, and the 1 to 5% of people that talk often is just a bigger number.
It's a bigger number.
Yeah, most people just give up before they get big enough to where other people can talk and have a conversation. You got 200 people in a group. It's just not enough people yet for you to have enough people to actually engage and talk, because like you said, most people are wallflowers and they just want to watch the conversations, not actually engage in them.
So true. So I think that's actually a good metric. Like if you have 1,000 people in the group, 100 are going to be engagers, 20 are going to post, maybe 10 are going to be like your super posters.
Yep.
So that's a fairly accurate. You're not just spitting those numbers out, but those are things that you've seen.
It's things I've seen. And what we also realize is that you can't just get content with that 10 that are super active, because we've seen is that 10 or 10% changes over times. It's like somebody's super active and then something changes in their life. Maybe they have a kid. Right. Maybe a kid leaves home. Maybe they change jobs, right? So
you got to be constantly growing the group to resupply that.
It always has to be new blood coming in. We're always nurturing the people that are already there and rewarding them. And one of the greatest ways you can show reward to people in your group is just by showing attention. A lot of times it's not like they need physical things. They just love to know that they're part of the community, and not just their part, they're an important part. Right. And they like to know that they're seen by the team or the person or whoever the leadership is. They're like, we see you, we value you in your conversations here. So oftentimes those are the people you can really spark as organic ambassadors for you to brand in the group at the same time.
Right. And that comes back to your moderators, or maybe you dropping in there every once in a while, just liking, commenting, sharing, you name it.
That's exactly it. One of the things we would do in the earlier days to help with consistency, we call like daily features. So we would just sit and create, okay, this is our content for every week, right? So every week we'll have some specific theme. We would post that theme in a group. Most of it would try to be something to spark user-generated content around, ask them to post their wins, asking them, what's their goals for the week, asking them accountability posts, did you complete your goals, things like that. So once the team scheduled all that things out, I needed to go engage a lot more earlier on, but all I had to do was close the loop. I didn't have to really post a lot of fresh stuff because we had content that was already posted, and then I just had to like people's things or leave a comment, congratulations, keep going, don't give up, things like that. And then as live became more of a thing in live streaming, finding, I don't have time to do a lot of it all the time, but picking spots where I can come in, and do live content and share something I may have known or give a case study on things that we did, or here's a behind the scenes on a launch we did, and giving them a perspective to do a few things, right? Show them that, hey, we're still not just teaching you, but we still actively use the stuff that we teach ourselves. We actually make money with it, and hey, we can give you some actual tips that you can implement right away.
So you build a community. You've now built a number of different communities on different platforms. Like, there's a lot of community building going on here. We're focusing really on the stuff most recently, which is the Facebook group. Then how do you monetize it? Like, how do you, like, people can create these large communities. I mean, in essence, Facebook was just one big community and did sort of what you're talking about here on just a massive scale. Build a whole community where you know, like, and trust, and then all of a sudden they started monetizing with advertising. So how did you do it with your own products so that you're not, because that's a tough transition. It's all of a sudden, I'm in here and I'm getting all this great content. You know, I've got good curators, I've got good moderators, I've got like the active 10%, but now they're going to be pitching me stuff. Like, how does it, how did you make that transition? Because if you don't do it right, you can end up really alienating a lot of people in that group. So how did you guys do it?
So with us, we developed a flywheel system where our very first step when people come in is we blow them away with the super engaged, super value-packed and content-packed community. Where people come in, they ask questions, and they get answers. There's a lot of communities you want to ask questions, but you don't actually get answers to. Right. But we've created this culture where people want to help other people. So they come in, they ask questions, they get answers, and they say, okay, this space is different. From that online community, this is one of the keys. We drive them to offline events. There's nothing like in-person connection. Yeah. So we do 2 conferences a year. Back before we started doing a conference, or before the conference got big, I would go to little cities and do pop-ups and things like that. But the goal was to get those people from in that Facebook group, online, offline. And once you get them offline so they can connect directly with me, they could see what, you know, me and the team were able to do. They could connect with each other, and that really strengthened those online relationships and built, you know, a new and stronger community than the one we had already online. And then once we take them from online to offline, the next thing we want to do is we want to present some type of continuity program. And that's what we learned, because we didn't do that the first time out with the actual marriage model. We had 40, 50,000 customers that didn't have a high order value, a high customer lifetime value. We've been doing that now. So we want to get them in some type of continuity program where, you know, we do the work once, we introduce them in, but we get paid continually over and over and over again with them. So
that's like a higher end, higher value community outside of the Facebook group?
Yeah, exactly. Originally, it was a 12-month mastermind program that we ran. That now has grown. It's about a $20,000 a year program for 12 months. So we were doing that, and we started with that. Like on the marriage side, we started with these like $20, $25 DVDs. We said, all right, we've done it that way, doing mass volume to a lot of people for a low amount. Let's start with a higher ticket actual offer. And we started with, used to be $10,000 the first time we launched it, and now it's grown to $20,000. But by doing that, like I said, we were able to make a lot more money with a lot less people, because we didn't have that 500,000 people that we thought we would bring over. They didn't come. Sure. So we were able to sell something high ticket that we weren't having to have the same volume of people to get in for. Then once we built that grew, that became the core thing. And then we started realizing that we've created so much content that's laying around, trainings that we did for them, sessions that we did, right? Event content. And we said, we got to repurpose this. So we repurposed it, made an actual membership site, made it a lower tier, because we had people in the community that were in the group coming to the events that said, I want to be in the mastermind one day, but I'm not ready yet. And then we created a lower tier membership for them, $99 a month.
So you created the high end first, and then went back and did the 99.
The high end first, yeah. And I'm so glad we did, actually. I think a lot of times individuals think that I have to start low and work my way up, but we actually did it the other way, and it made us a much more profitable brand by doing it in that manner. To where we would have had to been scrapping $99 at a time, right? One after one, we were able to just, you know, take these $10,000 clients and then 15 and then, you know, up to $20,000 clients and get them in to really solidify the revenue and the profitability of the brand. And then, like I said, go from there to say, okay, who are the rest of the people that we're not serving? Create them an offer. And it worked well, because now the people coming in at the lower dollar offer, they already see the higher program and they come in saying, I want to be there. Right. It's not something we got to sell them. They're already sold on that. They just don't have the resources right now.
Is implied.
Exactly. So they can come into
You're
it.
Like and say, the Elon Musk of the info space, really. No, seriously. Like, he created the $250,000 electric car. Like everyone's going to like the Prius, the 30,000. He's like, no, I'm going high end. Then I get the 100,000 S, and then I get the X, which is like at 60, and now he's got the 3, which is like at 30K. So filling it in, but the profitability comes from the top end to fund all the 99ers, and then the ascension path.
It's a lot of things we wouldn't have been able to do with the brand if we would have started on the low end and tried to work our way up, or we wouldn't have been able to do them as fast.
Right.
We were doing events. We do events, like I said, twice a year, January and June. But in the events, we were able to grow them. We were able to, move to better hotels, get more people in, hire better speakers, and all these things. But it all was because we were selling this higher ticket program that could basically incorporate the cost and absorb the cost of whatever that was. We couldn't have done it with the low ticket program. And even still, once we had community and launched the low ticket program, we still had to learn how to sell it. Because the first few ways we tried to sell it still flopped. And it wasn't until, we kept trying different ways, because oftentimes I think people don't realize you could have the right product to the right people, but if you're not selling it the right way, they still won't buy it. So we had to figure out which was the way and kind of scramble around the tiles till we said, okay, this is the way we get them in. Online challenges, what works great for this, and then moving from there.
Interesting. So get them online to offline. The obvious question for a lot of people is like, well, why would I have to go offline? Why can't I just do a webinar and then, book a call and then a sales guy and the whole sort of 5-figure sale? Have you guys done that as well for the higher end mastermind, or we found that didn't work? So
we did some of it over the last year because we couldn't have the in-person events. And what I've realized is, before it was a hypothesis. It was like just my thoughts of what I was going on, and it basically was confirmed this year that the connection is different.
Yeah.
Because when they came through our events, the other thing that happened is that was their indoctrination into who we are, into what we do, into the level that we actually serve our community
at. Anyway, there's a time commitment.
Exactly, time commitment. Yeah.
Did you do them like pop-ups in different cities around?
Originally we did, but over the last few years, just been like the 2 main events that we do in Atlanta twice a year.
Gotcha.
And like I said, we knew that event served as many of them indoctrination when they would come and they would see us and they would see the quality of the speakers, the content. It was easy. Yeah. Last year, when we had people that were joining just virtually, we had some people that were not good fits for the program. And I am 100% clear that it was because they did not come through that same indoctrination process of coming. I mean, when someone
Nothing
comes
beats the face-to-face.
Yeah, it's like when someone comes to traffic and conversion, like, the relationship is different.
It's fundamentally different.
Yeah, like when we first came...
and your ask can be greater.
Right.
And the chances of it being a good match are that much higher.
That's totally it. My wife and I first started coming to the event, like it changed our relationship. Actually, a great real-life example, I had saw products that digital marketers sold. I saw them online. I got the offers. I got the emails. The first products I bought, the machine and, things like that, I bought them because I came to the conference.
Physical.
I heard a conversation on the stage, and I went out to the booth and I purchased.
Yep.
It's just different. Like, it's still a lot. It's a lot you can do, and we've learned a lot you can do virtual. There's nothing like people getting together face to face.
Well, I always joke with Ryan is that the first digital product I ever bought from Digital Marketer was 43 split tests for I think $27, and then I got invited to the machine in Austin, and at that event, they pitched War Room, and I bought War Room. So I went from $27 to $30K, like overnight. Well, it was within like a couple of years.
Yeah.
But it was the physical event.
Exactly.
Absolutely. You can't beat it, but, it's more work.
Yes.
There's more logistics. But, I think that's a good lesson for the listeners here, is that, like, you can't shortchange any of this sort of stuff. I mean, obviously, you wouldn't be able to have that ask even at the physical event if you hadn't created the community side of the equation to begin with. So, like, that's the basis. You did it multiple times. So this has been tremendous, really. I really appreciate you coming on the show here today to show your entire journey. Where can people get in touch with you? This has been a pretty awesome story.
Sure, they can find out more about what we do at www.trafficsalesandprofit.com. They can follow me on Instagram just at Lamar Tyler, LamarTyler.
trafficsalesandprofit.com, and A-N-D, profit?
A-N-D, yep.
That's a damn good URL. Gotta hold on to that one.
I was surprised it was available.
Pretty lucky. Well, Lamar Tyler, thank you for coming on this week's show. For all the stuff that we mentioned here in this week's episode, head on over to digitalmarketer.com/podcast. This has been episode 328. I don't know about you, but I'm hungry for lunch, so we're
Yes,
ending
sir.
this show. Like I said, episode 328. Get over to digitalmarketer.com/podcast. Until next show, see ya.